I began excavating the ruins of Kandar with a group of my colleagues.
Candyman, 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 Candyman. Talk to me.
My time to go to sleep.
On Friday, October 13th, I went to the haunt that I've really been looking forward to returning to this year, more than most, honestly. Terror on the Timber Farm. I went to this haunt last year and filmed a video on it, and I was actually invited back out by the haunt to come and go through the haunt again this year and to do a video on it. So while they did provide me with a couple tickets for this, I am going to give an honest review. Honestly, they specifically asked for it, and I wouldn't have done it any other way. So this is held at Amelia Shotgun Sports in Yulee, Florida, which is just about half an hour or so north of Jacksonville. It's funny because I always joke that Florida gets rural really fast. Like, you're on a road that feels like a normal road and you take one turn and all of a sudden you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. And where they have this is very much like that. I mean, obviously it is a gun range during the day, so it makes sense that it needs to be away from things so that they have the room to do this kind of activities. But it's like you turn off the main road and all of a sudden you're just in the woods and it's dark as hell. I think when I went last year, like, the moon was out and really bright and it was creepy for that reason. This was a dark, foggy, overcast night, and it definitely added to the atmosphere. With my other haunt videos, I usually assume that, you know, if you don't want spoilers, you're not going to watch the video. But I'm going to say it here. I think if you are going to go to this, you should go in blind. Because for me, honestly, a lot of the fun was going around another corner and seeing something I completely did not expect to be there. So I don't want to take that experience away from anybody because that really heightened everything. And honestly, if you are in the Northeast Florida area, or even if you want to travel a little bit, I think this is worth it. I think they've definitely got something special going up there. And last year I loved it, and I think they improved it this year, and I'm anxious to see what they're going to keep doing with it. So, having said all the positive things, we've got to complain about something, right? And unfortunately, the one thing that I really had a complaint about was at the very beginning of it. Like, literally before they even checked my ticket. So, walking up, there's kind of like a long road. It's very dark out there, like I said. And they have a couple little lights around. It's kind of like A-frame sandwich boards with some notes and warnings or whatever. But then when you get up to about where the ticket taking is, there's one other sandwich board that has a QR code on it that you're supposed to scan and sign a waiver. There was somebody talking over a megaphone about it, and at first I misheard it as being anyone under 18, which made more sense in my head, but it was actually anyone over 18. And really, my gripe here is just that it was hard to scan the code in that low lighting. They had a little light underneath it, but it really wasn't enough to illuminate it, so I had to have somebody else shine their phone light on it to actually let me get a clear scan of it. And then I was having trouble getting service out there, so it was really hard just to connect to the webpage to fill that out. And honestly, it might already be online somewhere where you could do it ahead of time. I didn't see it, so it could be on me that I screwed that up. But I think having knowledge of it ahead of time next time, making it more clear when you buy the ticket or whatever, so you could have it done and just saved on your phone or whatever, would be preferable, just so that, you know, you don't have to struggle with doing that right at the door. But once you show them that you have the waiver for everybody in your party and they scan your tickets, you're able to go in, and the first thing they actually have is a photo opportunity. They actually had two different things. Last year they had one big photo op. I think it was like a static figure, and then you could kind of stand in front of it. This time they had two options. One was kind of like zombie corpses, kind of like those, I was thinking of them being like beach or roadside attractions where you could stick your head in and you have like a painted body or whatever, except it was a 3D zombie corpse that you could put your head up to like where the neck would go and look like you were that zombie corpse. But the one that I chose to do was a life-size zombie full body figure with brains shooting out of the side of its head, and they had a shotgun you could pick up and like put into a hole on the other side of his head to look like you're blowing his brains out. I thought that was a really cool, really inventive photo opportunity that they had. And honestly, it matches with their whole gimmick of being a shooting range. So yeah, it works really well. I guess it's not really a gimmick. That's like their day job. But you know what I mean. I've only ever been there for haunts, not for shooting. So to me, it's reverse of what it really is, I guess. But one of the things they changed this year that I love is they reversed the path. Last year, They brought you right into the haunt area, which is a pretty long path that's kind of continuous with different themes going through it. And then there was kind of a break in the middle and then one last path. This year, the short part is first. That break area is relatively early on now, and then you close it out by going through really the majority of the haunt. I think this is a great decision. I'm so happy they did it because it really kind of balanced everything out, and you left off with the best part.
Further than I found a coffin on Facebook Marketplace. That's bad enough. Yes, that is.
So the first section is a returning favorite of mine from last year. They're calling it the Heat. This is a kind of, they call it jelly ball or something, but it's basically Orbeez in an electric toy gun kind of thing. So they have all these targets out in the woods that are lit up by blacklight, and the orbs themselves are blacklight reactive. So you go through these paths, and there's a lot of static targets. Some are like zombie mannequins. Some are kind of like wood cutouts in the shape of a human or a zombie, whatever. And then some are just like random targets, like plates and things hanging from the trees that make noise when you shoot them. So you're able to just go through and, shoot at all these targets. It's honestly a really fun thing. I know other places do like zombie paintball or whatever, and I assume it's probably hard to maintain all that. So this seems like a much easier, sustainable way to do this kind of thing. And it's just a lot of fun. Like, there's no real danger. There's no scare actors in there for you to shoot at or anything, but it just is fun to actually be able to interact with the haunt in that way. And once again, keeping on their theme of being a shooting range, it all kind of marries together really well. So this is just kind of like a horseshoe-shaped loop. It kind of wiggles around a little bit, but it's this little loop, basically all in black light, and then you pop out the other side pretty much right next to where you went in, which makes sense because then they're able to take the guns from you and bring them back over to where they're handing it to the next people coming in. So it was a nice little efficient design. I think last time the two stations were pretty far away from each other because it was on one of the other paths. So I'm going to guess this made things logistically a lot easier, but it didn't detract from the experience at all. The next section up was The Birds. And aside from being a Hitchcock reference, this is where you get to actually use a shotgun to shoot clay pigeons. So included with your admission is 2 shots, and you're able to go out there and they kind of, if you're new at it, they'll walk you through how to hold the gun, how to do all that stuff, and you get 2 opportunities. If you want to do it more, you can actually pay and get some other shots. I wasn't really listening how much it was or how many more you got, but it's a cool experience. And this is, again, blacklight reactive. So the clay pigeons are like a neon orange. I failed miserably to hit anything, but it was still a fun experience. I skipped out on that part last year, so I definitely wanted to get the full experience this year and participate in that as well. The area around the shooting range, they had some kind of more static decorations. There was a little shop off to the side selling some things. And then once you're done there, you can go into the haunt proper. So I believe there's technically 4 different haunts or sections of the trail, but it's all continuous. So you are just on one path, both for the Heat earlier on, and then this section, they're kind of pulsing people through. You go in with your group. For the Heat, they sent us in with some other people because it was just 2 of us, so it ended up being 4 of us total going through that section. But for the haunt section, they had us just go by ourselves. The haunt sections, there's no signs that I saw telling you when you're going from one to the other. They are very distinguishable by the theme that you're seeing, but I could definitely see that if you're not paying as much attention to exactly what's going on, you might not realize you're going from one to the other. So the first section is the Fear Trail. This starts out with something I haven't run into at a haunt in a while, which might have been because of COVID, I don't know, but it's the big inflatable tubes on either side of you that you have to push through, so it really just destroys, your ability to look in as you're going through. They had to go through a door that had flaps or whatever first, but then you go through that, so nobody looking through could really see what's going on once you're going in. This section had a lot of different things going on. And I apologize because I'm just going off of memory. There's no real filming allowed in there. So this is just me trying to remember the order of things and say things correctly. So I'm probably going to get some stuff wrong. But you encounter kind of various intimidating figures, I guess. There was a guy, kind of looked like he could either have been a ghostly apparition or a killer, like an escaped mental hospital guy or something. He had chains and a dirty white suit on. You go through various bits, and honestly, the way they have this thing lit, there's a lot of strobe lights, there's a lot of low lighting areas, so it's hard to tell sometimes where there's even people on the trail. I mean, they'll make themselves known eventually, but there's a lot of parts where it's like, is that a person? Is that a tree? What am I seeing? I know there was a Jason actor that popped out, which was cool because Friday the 13th, it was perfect timing. As the path kind of winds through, we hit a point where we weren't really sure which way to go. It kind of dead-ended and it looked like a T. Last year, we had a couple of those as well, and we kind of were trying to figure out, okay, is it right or left? And kind of eventually just figure out which way to go. They solved that problem this year by you get it up there and somebody flies out of the bushes at you on the side you're not supposed to go to and gives you the clear indication you're going the other way. So the first one of these, I didn't really get a good look at what the costume was, but I think they had like a couple axes or something, just made a lot of noise and, clearly, go that way. The next thing I remember being there, I don't know if it was part of the Fear Trail or if it was part of the next trail, but it was kind of like a little shack set up, and there was somebody in there with a crutch and screaming, trying to like get you to help them. There was another person walking around. And to be quite honest, I'm not 100% sure if they were a regular employee or a scare actor, because we saw them walking down the trail in front of us for a bit longer than you would expect to see a scare actor kind of move through an area. And while they kind of crossed in front of our paths at a later point and headed towards the person screaming, they didn't really interact with them or anything. Not that like he's going to go over there and act like he's like slitting her throat or something, make her stop screaming for help, but I didn't see any of that. So that was a little bit confusing, but honestly it didn't detract from anything. The next section is Infestation. So this is a very The Last of Us kind of thing. There were some buildings coming up that had like that fungus going through it. They had some people in clicker-esque masks with the fungus coming off the front of it. Honestly, it looked really well done. You go into like a medical tent kind of thing. It was a tent, but it was like, kind of more like something you'd see at a larger event where it actually has like walls to it and everything. And here they did that kind of swamp effect where it's like low-laying fog inside of it with a light that almost makes it look like you're going through water. Like fog is almost a solid layer beneath you. It wasn't quite thick enough to pull that off, but it definitely, your vision was above the fog and limiting what you could see. And, inevitably there's a scare actor jumping out of that fog to try to scare the crap out of you. After that section, there is what I would consider my favorite section of the 4, Trail of the Dead. And again, I'm assuming that I'm identifying the correct section because it's all theme-wise. So this section had a lot of like cemetery theming to it, old Gothic manor kind of themes to it, and I believe the voodoo part was part of this as well. So yeah, going through like cemeteries, there was somebody in like the robes of death kind of coming after you. That was another great scare actor in the path because like we're walking and there's tombstones off to your left-hand side that are lit up. And then there's this shadowy figure walking at you from the right. And I've noticed with some haunts, like, there'll be times where, if you notice a scare actor, they might not try to scare you because the element of surprise is gone. And I saw this guy clearly walking there. I was like, oh, well, that's kind of a bummer. Like, I think he yelled at the people in front of us and scared them. But then he just starts, like, trailing, like, right behind us and just kind of, like, sitting over our shoulder. So I love it when scare actors are actually willing to like adapt what they're doing and kind of, do different things. Because me and my friends go through these things. We're half like, oh my gosh, that set theming is amazing. And then half like just laughing because it's funny to us. So I'm sure that doesn't necessarily make this character's job easier. There's another point where there was like a set off to the side of us. I don't remember which set this was exactly. Another like building to walk through. I think it was supposed to be like a mausoleum or something like that. It was one of those things, again, I'm not sure if we're supposed to walk in there or if somebody's supposed to come out of that and we're supposed to take the trail around. But again, where we thought we could go straight, somebody pops out in like a gravedigger's costume with a shovel, scraping it across the ground and kind of, forcing you to go through the mausoleum area. All throughout this as well, I forgot to mention, there's a lot of triggered effects going on. So there's things in the trees making noise, whether it being like a kind of animal noise or like car horn noises and things. I didn't realize that there were foot triggers. So my friend Colin, who went with me, said that he noticed there were foot triggers that were causing those to go off. Because this is actually woods and the ground's really uneven, I wasn't catching on that we were stepping on anything, turning these things on. I think a lot of people might not notice that, but I think that's a cool way to incorporate scares without having actors in places. There also were a lot of places where there were actors kind of like way low down in the grass or something scaring you where you wouldn't see them at all. And it's so underlit and the strobe lights and all that, it makes it really hard to see a scare coming in a lot of these situations. But along this trail, we hit my favorite part of this haunt. They built this creepy, like, gothic manor. Kind of reminded me of, like, a New Orleans plantation house thing. I don't know if they built it with, like, a forced perspective model to it, but, like, you know, it's clearly something that they built there. It's not a particularly large building, really, but it has an impressiveness to it that really made it feel like you were going into a house. Like, and just seeing it in the middle of this trail with, like, just trees and stuff around just really added to the effect of it. So looking in, you can basically see straight through this thing, and on the far end of the house, there is an actress with, like, I think it was like a mask, or I can't remember if it was a mask or makeup that she had on, just like with a creepy grin. But then she like contorted herself and like bent over backwards and was like staring at us upside down from the backside of the house. And that was freaky as hell. Like, we actually stopped and just stared at the vision in front of us for probably about a minute. I mean, it felt like a lot longer than that, but in reality, it's probably about a minute just sitting there admiring what we were seeing. Going in, there's actually like various little rooms in it that you could look into. I think they even had the effect of like stairs going up on the side. And we walked past the contorting girl. She'd stood up at this point, and as we're going past her, she just let out like a blood-curdling scream. It was pretty freaky. There's also even theming on the backside of it. I don't remember exactly what that was either. I think they had like skulls or something going on back there. And in talking about that one, I'm like, there was another house that we went into that was, in fact, they did last year as well. It was more of a real structure that had different rooms in it with people popping out. Somebody like opened up a window or whatever, popped their head through. But there's somebody outside, like when you walk up, they're on this chain link fence, like pounding against the fence, and then like knocking on the window of the house while you're in there. They're coming up behind you when you leave. I wish I remember what section that was in. I'm totally blanking on it. I wish I could have, like, maybe next year I'll just take, like, audio notes as I go through or something. I'll just audio record my trip through. Since I can't do video, and at least I'll have better notes. But I believe it was after the kind of plantation house that the lighting got a lot dimmer, and it started just being, like, little kind of almost candle lights guiding the path as you walk through. There were some kind of voodoo-style characters popping out at you. There was a whole, like, gypsy wagon off to the side. I think there's some part where there's, like, somebody deep in the woods, like, stirring a cauldron or something. It might not even have been a person. It might have been animatronic. But, again, so dark. I could just see that there's a pot glowing and see some kind of motion like it was stirring. And I believe that's what led us to the final section, which is the Jinx, which is a clown-themed section, evil clown-themed section. Last year, this was my least favorite part, but also this was the only part of the haunt that came after the skeet shooting break. So you did the big main part, and then this was kind of just a little outro after you kind of, you know, chilled out from everything else. So having it as part of this main loop now, I think it actually has a lot more impact. The set theming of it was pretty damn creepy. Like, they had like all these different things around, a lot of visual things to look at, but in the low lighting, you're like trying to read words that are scrawled on it, and you can't really. There's somebody talking and taunting you, and it, honestly, like, we heard her way before we got up to her. And she kind of like, you know, taunting, oh, you're gonna die in there, blah, 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 all that stuff. And then going through, I don't think there were a lot of scare actors in this one. I think I maybe saw 3 total in this clown section. But the last one actually was like blocking the path and, you know, actually really actually, honestly, all the ones in this section were very interactive. So, you know, it made up for it being, honestly, it's a much shorter section as well, but it elevated it too, just for being like actual confrontation with, you know, these evil clowns or whatever, as opposed to just kind of, you know, somebody yelling at you and you walking by. And that leads you straight out into the parking lot. So unlike last year where it was kind of a long outro of walking, now that it's reversed, you're spat right back out where you started. But the horror didn't end there. Like I said, it was a foggy night. It was creepy outside. I decided I didn't need a map to get back to the highway, and I got lost. And it was fine when I was lost on paved roads, but I finally got my GPS on to, like, tell me where to go, and it's like, take this immediate sharp right, and then I'm just on dirt roads, and I'm like, this is how we die.
Oh my god, this is how it all starts too, man.
Ooh, and then there's running and screaming.
I bet more the city boys go out to the country for a good time, and then, oh fuck.
The music doesn't help. Well, it does for the video, but still. You need to you put this music on as background noise. Because this works. Is this the outro?
It's gonna be ours.
So that's what happened. We never made it back. We are still out there. It actually wasn't just these, like, world roads. It honestly just was a path to hell, like at the end of the Beyond. So I haven't really been here this entire time. This is just my ghost still making videos even after I'm gone. But I do highly recommend checking this haunt out. Like I said before, I think they really do have something special going. And a lot of what is great about this haunt is that they use their environment to make it cooler. Like, it's authentic, right? You're in the woods. You know, a lot of the local haunts we've had around here, like 13th Floor and Warehouse 31, they're inside. They theme it really well, you know, it looks cool, but there's just something about being in the dark woods and having real fog rolling in and, you know, tall trees and sounds of animals out in the distance. And then maybe that thing you hear rustling in the bushes is a scare actor. Maybe it's a deer. Maybe it's a chupacabra. You know, it just brings it up to a level that no matter how good your interior theming is, you can't buy authenticity, right? And having it where they have it and setting it the way they do and just how just dark and creepy those trails are at night really just elevates things. It's funny because I was reading their FAQ the other day before I went, and I think last year they had something about like the grounds being haunted. And in the FAQ, it's like, are they really haunted? It's like, no, that's just part of the story. But like, I was willing to believe it because being out there, yeah, it's creepy. It is really, really creepy. So I highly recommend this thing. Thank you very much to Terror on the Timber Farm for having us out there. This thing's running, I believe, Fridays and Saturdays for the rest of October. And just seeing how much they were able to improve last year to this year, I'm looking forward to seeing what amazing things they can bring next year too. All right, so that's it for this one. I'll see you guys next time. Later.